Welcome to the official Mountain View Church podcast. For information about our gathering times, location, or how you can connect with us, visit us at mvc.life.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that I'm here. We started a series last week on healthy relationships and how not to suck as a person. And what we started off is talking about how if you do suck as a person, you've got to fix that before you can have healthy relationships, right? And you've got to learn to take responsibility for yourself and have self-control, because powerful self-control is the power to be able to make your own decisions, is to be able to tell yourself what to do and to do it, right? That's what self-control is. And it's one of the fruit of the Spirit. It's one thing that God has given us that we can make choices over. But sometimes what I say is not always what people hear. And one of the things I said last week is that God is not in control. And I had some people say, oh no, he's saying like God's like there's no God, or he's not. No, I didn't say that. I just said he's not in control because he's in charge. And he's not a controlling God in that he doesn't micromanage all of your decisions. He lets you make your decisions. He's given responsibility and authority for your life to you. And nobody's responsible for it except you. And including God, he's not going to take responsibility for that because he's given it to you. And he lets us make our decisions, and he lets us live with the consequences of our decisions. And if I were running the world, I would probably do it differently. But God obviously knows better than me, and he's chosen to make it work that way. And even in spite of all our stupid decisions, he still works it all together for good. And he still works it together, for salvation and all of that other stuff. But even as I was talking about that last week and talking about how we have to control ourselves and stop trying to control other people, I said that even controlling your kids doesn't work. And you can't control your kids. You can when they're little, and you can make them do stuff, but eventually they grow up and you can't control them. And, somebody said, he told us that, we let our kids do whatever they want. That's not what I said, just so you know, just to be clear. It's not what I said. But what I did say is self-control is what we want to teach our kids, to be able to manage their own lives, to be able to make decisions, to be powerful people that have a yes and a no, and that they know what that means. And to help them in that, we give them choices, we let them experience consequences, and all of that. But it doesn't mean that anything goes, right? If your kid steps in dog poop, you don't have to let him in the house, right? You can choose to take your shoes off or wash them, but you will not come in the house with those shoes, right? You can say that. It's your house. You can make the rules, right? But you can let them take responsibility for their choices and clean up their own messes, and that we're going to continue to talk about over the weeks to come. But today, what I want to talk about is how to create a safe connection with the people that you love. Because it is foundational for your relationships that if you want to, that more important actually than any of the problems that you might have and fixing the problems is staying connected to the people. And it's got to be your priority, this idea of choosing love. And we've been doing in this series and in their groups that we're doing, we have groups meeting all over the place. And some of you are reading this book, Keep Your Love On. And what that means, that idea of keep your love on, is that you actually have a choice. That your love, you can turn on and keep on in the direction of anyone you wish. Like a flashlight that I can just shine right at you, and what you do doesn't affect whether or not I shine the flashlight. It might affect the shadows behind on the wall in the back, but it doesn't affect what I do. I have a choice. And one of the foundational things of the reason we have to be a powerful person and have self-control is so that we can make a choice. That we can choose to be in relationship, and I can say, I choose you. Like when I married Tracy, I chose her. In fact, she used to ask me when we were dating, she said, why do you love me? And I'm like, what she's asking is really like, what do you love about me? And we'll get more to that later, and I'll talk about that. But why I love her, I just say, because I choose to. Because I choose to love you. There's a lot of things about you that I really like and that I really love. They're amazing. But the bottom line is, you have to actually choose to love someone. And it actually looks like something. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And to do that, I was trying to think of how to describe this idea of prioritizing a safe connection. And I actually asked God about it. And the thing that came to my mind was Grizzly Adams. And I know some of you that are older know what I'm talking about. Those of you that are under 40 have no idea what I'm talking about. And that's why I actually went to YouTube, which is actually amazing because you can find anything you ever wanted. But here is Grizzly Adams. Let me just show you this.
My friend Adams was accused of a crime he didn't commit. So he escaped into the mountains, leaving behind the only life that he ever knew. Now that wilderness out there ain't no place for a greenhorn, and his chances of surviving were mighty slim. Weren't no time at all, for he was beaten down, ragged, and nearly starved. Long about then, he come upon a grizzly bear cub, all alone and helpless. Now, Adams knew that little critter couldn't survive without his help, so he started right down that cliff, risking his own life to save it. Now that cub took to Adams right off. And that was when he discovered he had a special kind of way with animals. They just come right up to him like he was a natural part of the wilderness. But that bear cub, he was extra special. As he growed, he became the best friend Adams ever had, and together they became a legend.
So you get it? All right, might take a little explaining, but here's the thing. In order to create a safe connection with someone else, we have to deal with fear. We have to get rid of the fear for ourselves and have courage to step into it and really establish a safe connection. But we also have to get rid of it for the other person so that they're not afraid of us and afraid of what we might do, how we might hurt them, how we might reject them. That's why we kind of have to take punishment completely out of the equation. Because there's, punishment is, we punish each other in all kinds of ways, right? Sometimes we give the silent treatment, talk about people behind their back, we say mean things. But these are all things that we can do to punish each other. And in order to keep feeling safe and keep our love on, we have to remove that from the equation. We have to choose to love people in a way that they get it. Now, Adams did this with the bear, right? This bear, like normally, bears and humans don't necessarily hang out together. I mean, except at Yosemite, but they're not grizzly bears, I promise you that. Grizzly bears kill humans, right? In fact, somebody told me when I was in Montana, we were fishing in Montana, and he said, you know the difference between, how you can tell the difference between grizzly bear poop and black bear poop? He said, grizzly bear poop has bear whistles in it. Think about it for a minute. If you didn't get it, come back to it. But a grizzly bear is scary for a person. And Adams had to overcome his fear of the bear and of the mother that might be nearby that was probably even more scary. But he was probably constantly in the relationship having to push past his own fear of how the bear could harm him. But in order to, make the bear comfortable, he had to be able to let the bear not be afraid of him. Because animals are often naturally afraid of people, especially a little bear cub like that's alone and scared. Adams had to create the kind of relationship that make it so that the bear's not afraid, and then he has to love the bear in a way that the bear can get it. He has to kind of speak the bear's love language. Does anybody know what a bear's love language is? No. It's food, right? It's the same as mine, like feed me and pet me and we're good, right? Like that's the bear's love language. And so we can create that kind of relationship. And the reason I brought the Grizzly Adams thing up is because I think it's just a beautiful picture. Sometimes it's easier to see with animals than it is with humans. Tracy was telling me, because she was doing a lot of research into horses, and there's some people that use horses in equine therapy a lot, because horses, you have to, if you're afraid of horses, they're big animals and they can hurt you, but they're prey animals, and they've got, they can't always see straight ahead, so they have to kind of use their intuition and their senses and smell you and all this kind of stuff. And to interact, you have to get rid of the fear, and you have to love the horse in the way that a horse receives love, And it's easier to see sometimes with animals than it is with people. But it's absolutely essential that we see and learn how to do this with people. And one of the things about being a preacher is I always get an opportunity to practice what I preach. And yeah, it's not that fun. It's either the week before or the week after, like I say stuff, then I get the chance to practice it. So this week I was, I guess it was Thursday. Tracy took Luke to get his driving test, and he passed his driving test in Holland too. Good job, guys. But they went out to celebrate and eat, and I was still having meetings, and so I didn't make it in time for dinner. And so Tracy had already eaten, so she's like, "You better go get your own food." And I'm like, I'm a self-controlled person. I can take control of myself and go buy food and bring it home. I was hungry, and I was kind of on the verge of hangry, but it was going to get there. But I went, I got the groceries, I came home, and when I got home, I was, putting away the groceries and then trying to make some food, and I hurt myself. I pinched my thumb or did something like trying to open something, and I started going, ow, and it just hurt. I'm like, ow, and it kept bugging me, and Tracy's like, God, you're so dramatic. Why are you such a baby? And I got my feelings hurt, right? Because I'm like, she always says that. Just because you're a woman and you have childbirth, you think men don't have pain too. I hurt my thumb, for crying out loud. And so I just kind of got a little mad because I was hurt, right? Because out of my hurt my feelings that she was making fun of me, and then I got mad, and so I started kind of treating her bad. And so I was kind of being mean. And so what I started doing is basically creating a safe distance, because if I can kind of put some distance between us, I don't have to be as hurt by what she said to me, because I can kind of hurt her back, or I can kind of keep her at arm's length by kind of being mean. And so she basically kind of upped the ante and it's like, yeah, I don't even want to be around you. I'm going to go to bed. And she leaves. And so I went and played, Xbox and played, Tiger Woods 2014. I actually did really well, by the way. I won one of the tournaments. But I created this distance in the relationship. And the reality is, every relationship at all times, you're either moving towards or you're moving away. There's no other direction that you can go. It never stays static. You're either moving towards people in love to create a safe connection, or you're moving away to create a safe distance, always. And at that moment, I was moving away to create safe distance, because I'm not going to let her, I'm going to play my game, right? And I'm going to go to bed. And so, but then I remembered that I was going to preach about this on Sunday. And I thought, shoot, I have to practice. And so I knew that Tracy's love language is words of affirmation. Like we have different love languages. I already told you, feed me and pet me, I'm happy. My love language is physical touch, and I really like to eat. But, Tracy's is words of affirmation. She just loves when I tell her how great she is, right? It's why she was asking me the questions why do you love me? What do you love about me? She was fishing, way back then when we were dating. Her love language is words of affirmation. She just wants me to hear, the stuff that I love about her, because it makes her feel loved. It makes her feel secure. It drives fear out of the relationship. She's not afraid that I don't love her because I'm telling her. And so I knew that, and I knew that her other love language is emojis. And I don't speak that one, so I actually just posted, some pictures of her from the weekend before, and because I was looking at her, and then some things that I was just thinking about her, even though it's not how I was feeling at the time. I posted these things about who she is, because I knew that that's her love language, and I realized, my goal is to create a safe connection with her, not to create distance. And I could have, gone in the other room and woken her up and said, hey, we need to talk about this. We need to resolve this conflict. But it's that wouldn't have ended well for either of us. But instead, the next day she comes and apologizes to me, as if it were her fault. It's awesome, right? This works. But the reality is, when we love somebody in a way that they get it, and we don't make them afraid of us rejecting them. We don't make them afraid of us proving them wrong, of us, showing that we're right, and they're, whatever that thing is, it creates an opening in the relationship. It creates connection. And that connection is the most important thing that we can do. And especially, if there's a problem. If there's a problem, don't try to fix the problem until you've made the connection. You need to keep connected, because otherwise you end up fighting each other rather than fighting against the problem. And so many of us have lived our lives for so long with so much disconnection that we don't even realize that we've set up the ways that we react, the ways that we behave to create safe distance and keep us away from the people we love, rather than helping us establish safe connection. And so I want to talk about that, and I want to show you a little bit of, what Jesus has to say about that, because you can create this kind of safe connection by driving fear out of the relationship and then loving the other person in a way that they get it. And so let's look at Jesus. He says it this way in Luke chapter 6, verse 27. He says, "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies." Now, I'm not saying that your spouse or your kids or those people are your enemies, but why I am using this passage is, if you can do this with your enemies, what Jesus is saying, if he expects you to be able to do this with people who hate you, you can do it with people who love you but sometimes don't treat you very well, okay? "But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you." Talk about practicing what you preach. Did Jesus do this? Right? He loved his enemies so much that he died for us while we were his enemies. He did good to those that hated him. He blessed those that cursed him. He prayed from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." He practiced what he preached. And if you notice on this scripture, these words are kind of given in parallels. It's almost like you could draw two columns down the middle of a paper and you put love on the one side and enemies on the other side. And in the love column is all these ways that we can display or manifest love. Do good, bless, pray for. And on the other side is like your enemies, those who hate you, those who curse you, those who mistreat you. Now, those who mistreat you, those who curse you, those who hate you are sometimes people in your own family. But guess what? You still get to love them. You still get to pray for them. You still get to do good to them. And what Jesus is saying here is you actually can. Let me continue. Now he gets more concrete with some concrete examples of ways that you can manifest love. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, don't demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Now, some of this stuff is really extreme. And I know that in the name of just trying to follow the Bible, a lot of people have, said, hey, you should stay in that bad relationship. If they're slapping you, you just stand there and take it. That's not what Jesus is talking about. But what he is talking about, and we're going to talk about boundaries and talking about, like I said, you can say, you don't come in the house with those poo on your shoes, right? You get to decide your house. You get to have control over what you will do and will not do and what you will put up with and will not put up with. Like we talked about last week, it's one thing to be victimized and something happens to you. It's another thing to stay in that place and then be a volunteer. And when you realize that's happening, you don't have to volunteer for that. And I don't believe that's what Jesus is saying here. Now, there are extreme examples, and Jesus, once again, he practiced what he preached. And they slapped him, and he took it, and he offered, did not retaliate. But what he's talking about here is these are concrete ways to manifest love. Love looks like something. A lot of people think about love and they think, it's like a warm summer breeze. Makes me feel fine. Rolling through that. So, but love is actually looks like something. Like, if I love you, it's not just I have warm feelings towards you. It looks like something. Like, it looks like that I don't retaliate against you. It looks like I turn the other cheek and overlook an offense. It looks like I would rather have you take my coat and my shirt than to fight you over it because I care about you having a coat and having a shirt, right? Love looks like something. It looks like, giving to people when they have needs because you love them. Not because you're a pushover, but because you're actually manifesting love. See, love's invisible until it becomes manifest. Manifest means to make something invisible visible, to make you so you could see it. You can't see an emotion. You can't see a feeling. You can't even see a choice that you've made until you act on it and activate it, right? So Dallas Willard said that, his definition of love is to will the good of the other. But it's got to go even beyond just willing it, and Dallas would say this as well, in activating your will to do something about it. Because just because you will the good of the other doesn't actually make the other know that you will their good. They don't actually experience it. And so what I'm talking about here, and what I think Jesus is talking about here, is how do we help people experience our love so they get it? Not just so that we feel it or think it inside, but we have to make it manifest. We have to bring it out. We have to do something that manifests it. Love looks like something. He continues on. He says this, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. If you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. Look, it's easy to love in response to somebody loving you, right? I mean, Captain is my grandson, and he loves me so much. It's awesome. Like, I see him, he's happy to see me, he loves me, and it's easy to love him. It's harder to love other people. Some people are much harder to love. But that's what they're saying. Like, what Jesus is saying is like, don't think you're so great at loving if you just love people that love you. Everybody does that. The mafia does that, for crying out loud. Like, if you just lend to people that lend to you, like the bank does that. Like that's business. That's not love. That's a transaction. If it's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, that's not love. That's an agreement for a transaction, and it's fine. We can do that in, the world, but that's not love. Don't kid yourself. Even in your own relationships, that's not love. Like your marriage vows, those of you that are married, like there was never this conditional clause in the marriage vow. This is why I hate people writing their own vows, because sometimes they try to write loopholes into it, But there's no conditional clauses. It's I promise, I will, I do. It's not like I will if you do, or as long as you don't, or whatever. Like, it's about what we choose and what we do, and it's a choice. Love is something that you do, and you can do it to people even when they don't love you. So Jesus continues. He says, love your enemies and do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you'll be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. So be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Now, I just want to make explicit a couple things that I observed here, and most of these I've already said, but I wrote them down to be explicit because I want you to hear this. You have to take responsibility to control yourself in order to love like this. You can't love your enemies. You can't love anybody very well unless you take responsibility for your own choices. If you're always blaming everybody else for what you did, because what you did was a response to, they made you mad, they made you do this, you're not taking responsibility, and you can definitely never love like this. Because if somebody's mean to you, you can't be around them, or you're going to, whatever, or they're going to cause you to blow up. You have to take responsibility yourself in order to be able to love like Jesus is talking about here. Second, loving another person is possible no matter what they do. Otherwise, you couldn't love your enemy. It would be absurd for Jesus to ask people to do something like this if you couldn't do it. Like the whole fact that he's saying, this is what I'm telling you, means you can do this, right? Loving another person is possible no matter what they do. You can turn your love on and keep it on regardless of the other person. Third, turning your love on and keeping it on is a choice and an action. Fourth, it looks like something. Love looks like something. It's not just a vague idea. You have to manifest it into the world through doing some act of love. You love somebody, like actively. It manifests in good deeds, lending, giving, non-retaliation, blessing, all those things. Fifth, it brings great rewards. And it marks you with the family resemblance, right? Be like your Father in heaven. He's merciful. He's kind to the unjust and the, people that mistreat him. I mean, Jesus certainly was. And that's how his Father was. And he's a spitting image of the Father. And when we love the way God loves, we look like him. And then I guess the last observation I would make is that if loving your enemies this way is possible, then how much more your beloved? How much more your friends? How much more your brothers and sisters, your daughters and sons, your husbands and wives? The people that are most important to you. Now, I get that there are times when you want to create a safe distance from people, like Adams did with the long arm of the law while he went out into the wilderness and got him a bear cub, Because he wanted to create safe distance between him and the law because he was accused of something and he wanted to get as far away as he could. But he had to in order to create a safe connection to that bear, he had to choose to, love the bear in the way that the bear could be loved. And we need to do the same thing. If we're going to love those around us, we're going to love with really the way God loves. And so the question I would ask is this: what is it that makes a person feel secure and loved, so they don't have to be afraid of you in the relationship? So they don't have to be afraid that you're going to punish them, that you're going to reject them. So they're not going to feel afraid that you're going to say things to other people about them or, say mean things to them, or that somehow they're going to be hurt by you. What is it that creates that kind of safety for somebody? Well, there's a guy named Gary Chapman that came up with this book called The 5 Love Languages, and people have talked about it a lot. There's a chapter in the Keep Your Love On that talks about it. But basically, it talks about 5 different love languages and ways that people feel loved. And we all do it a little bit differently, right? Because some people feel loved by different things. Like I was telling you, Tracy really feels loved when I tell her what I think about her and how I feel about her and what I love about her. She's a words of affirmation person. And words of affirmation people need that kind of affirmation. And if they don't, they start to shrink, they start to get anxious, they start in the relationship feeling insecure. And in that insecurity, they start to try to protect themselves because they're afraid. They're insecure around the relationship, so they start to protect themselves more. And so the way to help somebody that's a words of affirmation person is to just keep telling them words of affirmation and be careful not to just use criticism because it does the opposite. But when you have somebody and you tell them how you love them, why you love them, what you love about them, it starts to settle them down and they have security and they start to just blossom and they feel loved. It creates a safe connection. So it's the same thing. There's other ways, receiving gifts. Some people's love language is gifts. Now, that doesn't mean that they're materialistic or they just want stuff. Because if you get somebody the wrong gift that they didn't really want, that doesn't feel as good to them. But some of you have people in your life that buy you gifts and they know how to find just the perfect thing. And then you always forget to buy them something. You're totally blowing it in that relationship. Because those are your gifts people, right? The people that know how to pick out just the right gift, that's their love language, and that's why they do it that way. And we tend to love people with our own love language, the way that we like to receive love. But sometimes we totally miss their language. That's been a problem with Tracy and I, because I don't really care about words of affirmation. If you come tell me, hey, great sermon, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Sorry. But, I know it's great. What am I going to say, right? That's not my issue, right? But what I need is like I said, food and touch. I'm a touch person. And so, I'd rather have Tracy come and rub my back, run her fingers through my hair, little affection, like that's how I feel love. So come give me a hug, rub my back, pat me, high five, right? I just gave everybody permission to touch me, so there you go. But different people have different love languages. Some it's gifts. For some, it's quality time. Quality time, people just love to have like just you and them. Let's go do something special where it's just the two of us, where we're connecting, we're engaging, we're talking, we're just being together, not looking at your phone, not when you're, on Instagram every second. Like, let's just be together. Like, that's quality time. People feel that. And they feel disrespected and disconnected when they don't have that. And then there's some people that are acts of service people. Then you can always tell who they are because they're the people that love to do acts of service for others. They're always helping, and they're always like doing things for you and making you stuff, making you food, and that's awesome. But they always like then feel gypped because nobody does it for them. Because that's really their love language, and that's really what they're trying to do is get everybody to do stuff for them, but it's not working. Because we tend to give love in the way that we like to receive it. But what we need to do is we need to study the people around us and then give love in the way that they need to receive it. Because what's going to create security in your relationship is when you love a person so they really get it, so they feel it in the way that they receive it. That's what this whole love language thing is about. And it will reduce the anxiety in a person about the relationship. It'll make them feel secure when they feel loved. And it'll keep that connection strong rather than resulting in disconnection. And it's got to be intentional. Love looks like something. If you just say, I love you, well, that's good. If it's a words person, like do that, but back it up with like doing acts, like Jesus gave concrete examples. Love looks like something. It's not just a feeling, it's not just an intention, it's an action. Now, I want to invite a friend of mine up to talk a little bit about this with Paul Difilippo. Why don't you come up, Paul? Give Paul a big hand. About 4 years ago, I met Paul. It was when I was doing this series, or a similar series, talking about relationships back then, and going through this book, Keep Your Love On, and it has been transformative in Paul's life, and I wanted him to share a little bit about his story. So thanks for being here, Paul, and being willing to air your dirty laundry.
There's a lot. Yes, so thank you for having me, Todd. So 4 years ago, Wednesday of this week, was the day that my wife asked me to step out of our relationship, our marriage. I had a lot of issues with anger, and just a lot of issues that I had that I portrayed on her, on my kids, and I'm creating fear within them. And she asked me to step out. We were on the verge of divorce, and everything kind of hit me all at once at that time, knowing that I really needed to make a lot of changes in my life. So I knew that, like I said, changes needed to be made. And so Dina received this podcast from a friend, which gave her the strength to stand up to me, to ask me to step out. She asked me to listen to it. I did. Realized a lot in that. Some of the things that really hit me like as a ton of bricks was relationships are based out of either love or fear. And I just realized that all my relationships were based out of fear, and that killed me. I also realized she had a choice, and she was choosing to leave. And it was very serious. There was no joke about it, and I was about ready to lose everything I loved. So we came to meet with Todd, came to church, and we started on our path, but mostly I started on my path to really discovering who I am, and finding out more about myself, and started, the healing process.
Yeah, it's crazy how when one person in a relationship takes responsibility for themselves, and it wasn't like she was telling you what to do, she was just saying what she was not any longer going to be able to put up with, and she was making a decision for herself that basically put you in a position to have to make some decisions for yourself about what you were willing to do to make the relationship work, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of, some of the core beliefs here at Mountain View. The first one is being authentic with self. And when I was alone that weekend, and then many afterwards where I was separated from my wife, I had to really look in the mirror and find out who I am. And realizing all the hurt and pain I had caused was very, very difficult thing to do. But I knew I had to be authentic with myself because I couldn't progress on to love Dina and to love my 3 kids. I needed to love myself first, and I needed to start a lot of the healing processes through that. And so being authentic with who I was, what I caused, it didn't define me, but it was a way for me to start this process and start working through the areas where I needed improvement on.
Yeah, and what's interesting, even in what you just said, like in your authenticity of recognizing what you'd caused and what you'd been causing, and it wasn't as much that you needed to like just love yourself in a vacuum. It was that you needed, like, there is someone who loves you, who has loved you all the while in spite of yourself. Mm-hmm. And as you got to know God and Jesus and him, his love for you at a deeper level, it gave you the ability then to accept even those things that were so broken in you and accept his forgiveness that created the opportunity for you to love others. Because I think a lot of people hear this idea of like loving yourself and they think, oh, that just feels like selfish, it's inward and all that. And it can be if that's what it is, if it's just all about you, but it's about that. That's why we start with that authenticity with ourselves, and we develop this intimacy with God where he begins to redefine us and how he feels about us, how he sees us, and our identity's found in him that gives us the ability to love other people. And it was cool to watch that in your family and in your life, because when you changed, it started to open up an opportunity for connection with Dina, that she started to be willing to trust you again and to step into that. And it took a while. How did you drive fear out of the relationship with her and the kids when it was so much based on just fear of disappointing you, fear of you blowing up, fear of your anger?
Yeah. So part of me recognizing this was realizing that I kind of had a saying that kind of said a lot. It was a what if. What if Dina decides not to love me anymore? What if she decides to have an affair? What if I decide to have an affair? What if I, whatever? And that what if was a wall, and that was based upon fear within myself. Fear to truly trust her, to truly trust myself to love her, and to completely open up. And I knew I needed to break down that wall. And there are a number of things that happened in our life and that are still happening, because, trust me, we haven't made it to the mountaintop. We are struggling today, this morning. We're still struggling with stuff. And our kids are teenagers, and as many as you know have teenagers, it's a little challenging at times.
It is for the kids and the parents, right?
Yeah, they're very challenged with me. And so what we have been able to do with this connection that we have, and Dina's love language, she really has 2. She has acts of service and quality time. And what I realized, like you were mentioning, mine's physical touch as well. If I give her physical touch, that doesn't speak her love language. I need to vacuum. I need to do the dishes. I need to do some of these things without her asking, because what I have seen over time was that just when I do it automatically, then automatically she's giving me physical touch. And it's just amazing how we connect that way. But when we do this, what we've also realized is without Christ in our life, this battle, we couldn't get over those issues. But with Christ, we realize that we have the ultimate warrior on our side, and that while we are battling finances, family, kids, a lot of issues, if we can do it together, and I am her advocate. She is my advocate. We're going to go through these battles, but we'll go through it with Christ, our warrior, on our side, and that is going to bring us through. And it is tough, and we are challenged. Our word for the year is trust, and that has been a really tough one, to trust through some of the challenges that we've gone through. But we know when we do, we lean into that. He provides.
Well, and what you said is so important, because the fear that you had, that's what that what if is, right? It's that like, what if something bad happens? What if I do something, she does something? What if the marriage falls apart? That fear was causing you to create disconnect, because you're, being mean to her, trying to control her, or the kids, or yelling at them, or whatever. But it's not just because you're a mean guy, it's because you're afraid. And that fear causes you to create a distance so that you won't be hurt. So, it's like, I'll break up with you before you break up with me, or that kind of thing. Like, because it's fear, and so you create more hurt to keep that distance. But when you're at that distance, and this is why I say it's so important to pursue the connection first, not to try to fix the problems, but to put your priority on keeping the relationship with a safe connection. Because when you changed your strategy and started working on that safe connection, then like you said, now we're a team and we can work together on the problem. Otherwise, when we're disconnected, now we're against each other and the other person's the problem, or whatever the thing is, we're fighting against each other rather than fighting for each other, with each other, against the problem, because we're connected as one. And it's that way with romantic marriage relationships, with friendships, with parent-child, child-parent, all kinds of relationships. It works this way. Prioritize the connection. Create that safe connection, and you will be able to work together to address whatever the problem is. I'll just say one last thing as we close this out. Somebody gave me, somebody posted this week this thing on love languages, and if some of you haven't got the love language thing down yet, this might help you, because if your love language, kind of like mine, is tacos, you might understand this. But if you're a words of affirmation person, what you might need to hear is your tacos are delicious, right? If you're an acts of service person, I made you tacos, right? If you're a gifts person, here's a taco. If you're a quality time person, let's go out for tacos. If you're a physical touch person, let me hold you like a taco. But look, like I said, Jesus practiced what he preached. And he made sure that he loved us in a way that we got it. God's love for us, he's always loved us. But in Jesus, he showed up in person to show us at a human level what it's like. He touched people. He spent quality time with people. He spoke words of affirmation to people. He did acts of service for people. He ultimately laid down his life for his enemies, poured himself out unto death, and gave himself to us, basically to remove all of the fear out of the relationship, to create a safe connection, so that we could be safely connected to God and have relationship with God without fear of judgment, without guilt and shame and all the other things that get in the way. Without any of that, he removed all of that stuff, and he came all the way to us. And if you're somebody that has never put your faith in Jesus and received that gift, he is inviting you. The Bible says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. He knocks. And you got to open the door and welcome him in. Like, he doesn't just barge in. He's given you authority in your life. He doesn't just take control. But he will come in. He will enter in that kind of relationship with you. And he will fill you with his Spirit to give you the ability to do what he's asking you to do here. He'll fill you with his Spirit of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control, so that you can live like he lived, as a chip off the old block, to be just like your Father in heaven. And if that's what you want, I invite you to just come receive Jesus. Just invite them into your life. You can go receive communion. You can go to these people and they'll pray for you. If you want to, receive communion, if you want to give an offering, if you want prayer, you can go there. But let's just take this time and respond to the one who has loved us, who has removed all fear from the relationship and done everything to create a secure connection with us. And then we can go do the same for each other. God, we love you, we thank you, and we ask that you would continue the work you've begun in us and make us more like Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen.